Okay, welcome to ThriveTalk, Northeast Ohio Thrive Magazine's video podcast. I'm Marie Elium. I'm the editor of Thrive Magazine and also the host of ThriveTalk. And today, I'm really excited to have siblings, Monica and Michael Johns, and this is a really long name of a company. Okay, so hang in there here. It's the Johns-Carabelli Company, Semerano Monuments and Flowers. So I'm assuming this is a combination of families over generations that have formed this company. But we're going to talk about monuments, monument planning, memorials, that sort of thing with Monica and Michael, who are brother and sister. And let's get started a little bit with what is a monument exactly? What do you all do? What do you specialize in? Tell me about your business. I'll start with Michael.
Oh, you're going to start with me. Okay.
Start with you.
So, our business is 148 years old, 147 years old this year. I'm the fourth generation of my family in the business, along with my sister Monica. We've got another sister of that generation. My son is working with us. Monica's daughter is working with us. Our father, grandfather, great-grandfather, we're all in the business. There were three generations of the Carabelli family in the business before that. So tradition, history, lineage, that's all part of who we are, which is great because that's what we do. We record those legacies and those histories.
Okay. Well, Michael, I know Cleveland has a strong history of stone carvers and people coming here from Italy. Was that ever a branch of your family, or were you all in the tombstone memorial monument business?
That's a great question. So our family history in the monument business started in Cleveland, Ohio. However, our founder, Giuseppe Carabelli, came over from Italy around 1875. When he did, he was considered one of the finest journeyman sculptors in that region of Italy, Campobasso, and he came to make his fortune. He was in New York for a while, did some work on the federal buildings there. He did the lions on the Boston Commons, and some other notable works. And somehow or another, he got connected with John D. Rockefeller, who convinced him to come to Cleveland to make his fortune. And Rockefeller was right, because at that time, Cleveland was one of the places to be in the United States. There were more millionaires in the city of Cleveland at the turn of that last century than any other city in the United States. That fact is one of the reasons why Lakeview Cemetery has grown to have the reputation that it has. It was founded in 1875 as a out-of-town country cemetery, and it's grown. If you've ever been there, you'll know that is not your first impression at all.
Right. It looks like it's in the heart of the, and it's so beautifully landscaped too. It's one of those landscape cemeteries that were really popular in that era. So just extraordinary. And then, so Monica, what do you do with the business? Well, wait, I didn't ask Michael exactly what he does. So because I know it, but our listeners don't. Michael, you're a master stone carver.
I'm a master stone carver, yes, and my specialty is lettering. Hand-cut square raised lettering, round raised lettering, V-sunk lettering. Not so much sculpture. That's a little different line, but I think that you'll find that most sculptors will say that sculpture's one thing, but carving lettering takes much more precision. Yeah. Because when you think about it, if you're carving a rose or a leaf or something like that and something goes amok, it's okay because you just change the shape of the petal or the leaf. But when you're carving an A or an E, you can't make it a V or an F. It doesn't work, right? Because you're misspelling something.
I assumed, do you use tools? I mean, this is a dumb question, but I just assumed this was all like on a computer and you plug it in. I guess I don't know how any of that happens.
Sure. That's a great question. So it started with hand tools, hammer and chisel. And then in the, probably around the 1920s or so, sandblasting became to be the popular method. It was much less labor intensive. There was changes in how the stencil was made and created for that sandblasting process over the years, and ultimately that led to computers being used in our industry.
Mhm.
And computers have done a lot to take away the labor intensive part of our business. The majority of the templates that we use for sandblasting are generated by computer, but all the designs that we use are our own designs. They're not clip art from somewhere else.
Mhm.
They're unique designs to us, as are the majority of the lettering styles that we use. But even though probably 90% of our work is done that way, because we're in close proximity to Lakeview Cemetery, there is still an awful lot of hand work that has to be done. Because at Lakeview, there's still a number of very large estate family lots that have maybe 20 or 30 or 40 even grave spaces. And so the headstones that were made back in 1895 and 1900 on those lots have to be matched today. And the way to do that is
Really?
with pneumatic hammer and chisel. And that's my specialty. Yes.
That never occurred to me that
I'm
that.
I'm going to add an extra layer in that, because I think Mike skips the step of, before it can be carved, it has to be drawn. And again, he is a master designer in lettering to be able to duplicate lettering properly. It's not close, it's not almost, it's exact. We take paper and pencil and measuring tools, and that is a whole art skill that has been passed down to generations to my brother, and now he is teaching my daughter that skill as well, because we need that skill for that Lakeview Cemetery especially, but there's other cemeteries that we work in that have old lettering styles that are not computer generated. People in the industry will do something close. It's almost matching. And finished stones, in our opinion, could have been done better if they had taken the time to hand draw to duplicate it exactly.
So I'm assuming that if you go into an old cemetery and you can find where there have been shortcuts to the lettering, and I bet you can spot that right away. If you're
Yes.
walking around, you're like, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Again, the computer is nothing more than a tool. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
And in the hands of an expert, it's a great tool. In the hands of a novice, it's something else, because kerning, letter value, position, placement, white space, how the lettering relates to the designs that you're including, the size of the design, the nature of the design. I mean, there's so many different factors that play if you're experienced and you know what to do.
Sure.
But there's a lot of folks that never learned those basics, never learned that understanding of the process. And so they go about their business in a completely different way.
Yeah, okay. Well, then that brings us to Monica, because Monica, what is your specialty? What do you do?
I meet with the clients and design in front of them rough sketches and ideas and concepts. So I'm the person that works with the family to develop the concepts. And from the concepts, we create potential designs, intermittently on the computer. I'm not an artist, but I can work in the computer to put some skills together. And then those ideas go to our sister Michelle in the design and drafting department to sharpen all of the quick things that I have put in the computer. So I do the rough draft. Michelle and Elise do the final fine tuning, like Mike said, all the kerning and letting and all the proportion of every element. And that's why our work looks so different, and artistically is very pleasing overall. And we win awards for our artistry, and it is an art. It is memorial art, and that's what we really strive for, no matter if it is a John D. Rockefeller monument or a more simple traditional flat marker. It doesn't matter. All those design skills are put to use in no matter what the size of the piece.
I mean, do you all sign your work on the back of the memorial? Do you put a mark on there to?
No.
Is that something that's done?
It was something that is still done in some parts of the country. It was done in Cleveland for a while. Most cemeteries don't really like the idea, but what I would say is we sign our work through the quality of what we do.
Oh.
And it's not difficult for someone with a trained eye to walk through a cemetery and be able to pick out our work over our
That's cool.
competition.
That's so interesting.
So different.
That's fascinating. I love, that's very interesting to me about this whole arena. So the Monica, when a family comes in, so I've only helped by fortunately, one tombstone or participated in that. But it was honestly, in our family, it was kind of an afterthought. It's like, oh, we gotta get the grave marker. Okay, and it was like a couple of months later, and there was some thought put into the verbiage on it. My dad had certain verbiage, but there was not this going on in the discussion. And so tell me about what happens, like who's the ideal client and when do they come in to meet with you all? Because I think this goes into your point, or what I've heard about estate planning is that planning for monuments or memorials is a component of it, of estate planning. So tell me about what your dream client would be. And when you see them.
I have so many dream clients because it's always better to do pre-planning no matter what part of the process, because then you are assured you're going to get what you want, which is huge, especially when it comes to monumentation. Because it is such an afterthought, a lot of times, I won't say a lot, but there are many times that people come in wanting a certain type of monumentation, and we as the professionals, every cemetery has different rules and regulations. Different areas of cemeteries have different rules.
Oh.
So even if, down the road, somebody's got a monument and I want a monument, that doesn't mean my space permits it. So allowing yourself to understand what monumentation style is allowed when purchasing the monument or the grave space, that allows you to enable yourself or your family to choose something that you as the consumer want to have. So pre-planning is very good. It's up to the cemeteries to help explain what is permitted and not. Again, families assume because I see something down the way, I'll be able to do it.
Right.
Unfortunately, I'm dealing with two families currently that I'm faced with the situation of, we can't do what you want. Now I've got to use my skill in creativity and figure out how to make this a better situation.
Well, what are some examples of restrictions that cemeteries have other than, we have all seen those, I think they're just boring, the flat ones where they're easy, I guess, easy to mow around, but it doesn't seem to have any sentiment with it.
Right. Well, I think we have less. We have less of space to be creative, but we still get very creative with flat stones. Stones that are cemeteries that have flat markers were really designed as memorial parks versus places that have upright monumentation. There's a number of cemeteries on the east side and west side that it's only allowed to have a flat marker. That doesn't restrict us to be creative. So not only are those restrictions in place, but we also have some cemeteries that require bronze versus granite. So the materials are also restricted in certain cemeteries. For example, there's the diocese cemeteries in Cleveland have restrictions on what can go in the first rows, the second rows. Certain sections have to be grass level, and it is a maintenance thing and a ease of care for them, and I appreciate that. And then if you want to do something larger, the cemetery is going to have different fees for monumentation that sits above ground. At Lakeview Cemetery, they have beautiful sections that have specific lots that are monument lots. So you have to buy a certain space to allow something upright.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So you have to, the buyer needs to understand these things before selecting a space. So a particular family I'm working with, they loved the space, but had no idea of what design genre they were going to be restricted to in this particular section. It's an old section of the cemetery, so their regulation is nothing modern or contemporary. Guess what? That's what they want. So now we've got to work together with the cemetery to get this family in a good place for everybody. So that's my change.
Okay, so obviously starting before someone's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if you want something special for yourself, by golly, you better start working on it while you're of sound mind and body.
Right.
I'm assuming that would
it's really a recommendation.
And I don't think it's necessarily an afterthought, but it's more of a secondary concern. When a death occurs.
Yeah, that's a better word for it, because it was secondary. We didn't focus on that,
Right. You have to have a funeral. You have to have a disposition. After that, you don't have to do anything. But what happens is that people may not understand that they have options, that they have choices. And so, as Monica indicated, the best time to talk about memorialization and what you would like to do is before you have any cemetery property, so that you understand what you'd like to do and where it's permitted. And so often, just like Monica said, there's so many times where a family will think that they can do one thing, but they learn that they can't. They have to do something else. And that's when we really need to be creative and find a way to capture the essence of what they want to memorialize on the palette that they're allowed to use.
Right.
The other thing that I think is important to point out, if I may, we talk about cemetery property, but you don't own cemetery property. Nobody owns cemetery property except the cemetery. What you do is you buy the right to burial. Okay, so you're allowed to inter into that space. You don't own it. You just have the rights to burial, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's an important distinction, because that is how the cemetery is permitted to have rules and regulations in terms of what can be. And I think that those most times those rules and regulations are important, because they help guide the aesthetic of that space for hundreds of years, not just the 5 or 10 or 20 that your experience.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Well, there's a fun fact which I saw on your website, then I double checked it, about the anniversary of cremation in the United States, and I thought that was I don't know, just kind of interesting, because like I said, I like cemeteries. But how has that impacted your business, cremation? Because I mean, there's a whole thing with funerals now, especially since COVID. A lot of people are blowing off funerals, or they're like just not doing anything, and which I find odd. I find unsettling personally. But and then I'm assuming that some of that spills over into memorials too. This I don't know. Is it a trend? You tell me. Your guys are the ones in the business, but anecdotally, it seems like people aren't having funerals as much. And I certainly don't hear people talking about cemeteries. We're not doing graveside services or things. And that's got to impact memorials too.
Sure. COVID changed everything universally across our lifestyle, right? How kids are educated, social interactions or lack thereof. I mean, the cost of goods. I mean, just the way people think about things. COVID has changed everything. But I think that now we're starting to, the dust is finally settled and people are tired of some of the things, some of the ways that COVID has changed our lives. And I see a trend back the other way to more traditional funeral. For the first time ever, when surveyed, folks are saying their first choice is full burial. And that's the first time.
Really?
Yes. Even though cremation is at 55, 60%, even in the Cleveland area, greater Cleveland area, first choice is now full burial. But there's a lot of factors that impact that and may make it ultimately the second choice. But given all things being equal, people would always or more often than ever prefer full burial.
That's not burying ashes. That's
correct.
Oh, okay, that's okay. Full interment. Huh. Okay, that's surprising.
It is surprising, especially like I said, with the cremation statistics that we have. But cremation doesn't negate memorialization. That's the other thing that people have to look at, because more and more we talk about the ashes in the closet, in the cupboard, on the shelf, left at the funeral home. Disposition is really becoming more important than it had been. And so, cremation has forced us to think differently, more creatively, more outside the box in terms of memorialization. It doesn't mean no memorial. It just means memorial is different. It changes how we think about it. It may change where we place a memorial. It might be in a park or in your backyard or some other setting. It's not just in the cemetery anymore. So we have to be a lot more imaginative in the way we go about thinking about memorialization today than we did 50 years ago.
Marie, I saw you go a little crazy. Not that cremation burials in the backyard, but we designed tributes that families can have.
There's a story behind that look I gave you, because my next door neighbor sprung on me a few years ago that she had already spoken to the local funeral director, and her ashes were going to be spread in my flower beds. I don't even have my dog's ashes in my flower beds. So no. So afterward, my husband was like, did you say that was okay? I go, no. I think I'll have the last word on that, but no. So, all right, that makes sense. Although there are, and I do know some families who have relatives still like on bookshelves that they haven't gotten around to doing anything with these ashes, which is odd to me, but
Well, and what happens, what we see happen is now mom and dad are both gone. Okay, it's time to make a decision. All right, maybe the whole family is going to use cremation as their choice. Now we make a family monument and have one place, because a lot of cemeteries will allow, 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 6 cremains in one grave.
Okay.
So now we have the opportunity to design something that has to incorporate multiple names. So again, cremation is a choice of the disposition, but I feel the pendulum coming back that the final resting places are being chosen. So there is a family monument.
Okay. That's good. I mean, I don't know, kind of old fashioned like that. I like that.
Right.
I like that whole idea. So do you guys have your memorials designed?
Well, we do. It's a family monument. We have our parents purchased 30 grave spaces at Lakeview. There's 6 kids. It's taken some time for us to design it.
I bet there's a lot.
Yeah, the
family.
look. A lot of folks ask us, what's the right time? How soon should I place a memorial? Well, the answer is when you're ready.
Right.
When you're emotionally ready, when you're financially ready. It's not in the Jewish faith and tradition, they mark the 1-year anniversary of the death and have an unveiling. But that's the only situation that I'm aware of where the clock is ticking, so to speak. It's taken more years than I'd like to admit. I had it documented on my script. My sister said I'm not allowed to tell you exactly how long it took. But it has taken a number of years for us to finalize what we wanted to do. And that's, one, I suppose, because the families that we serve come before our own.
Yeah.
So that plays. But also, making the decisions, knowing what we know, trying to really commemorate our family, but not just the lives, but the legacy of what we do. So it's been challenging. My dad had a hand in it.
Like? I want to see it. What's it look like? Is it like big? Is it?
It's going to be 8.5 feet tall, which is pretty good size for today's monuments. It's shaped like a window or a portal. So it's a tall rectangle, open in the center. The idea is the transition from this life to the next. There'll be a pedestal in the front of that right now that will double as a planter, but ultimately will have a bronze angel added to that. There's some tapered setbacks on the sides of the opening, a nod to the Art Deco tradition that I'm going to get a little teary-eyed here. I'm sorry. That my grandfather was so famous for.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
So it's and there's going to be a lot of handwork involved in the design and the family name. I'll be executing that along with my son. So having that multi-generational component to it is just really fabulous. But it's taken us some time to get there. And so what I'm trying to say is, if you're not ready, don't buy. The time will come when you say, you know what, I have to do something. You said yourself, you've had one experience, right, with purchasing a memorial. And that's most people that come and sit down with Monica have had zero experience.
Right.
So they have no idea what to ask, what's involved, how much it costs. They have some general, maybe, if we're lucky, some jumping off points. But our job is to take those jumping off points and fill in the gaps and help the family, really understand what options they have, and really with our company, unlike so many, the possibilities are really, I don't want to say limitless, because they're certainly a function of what can actually be carved into the granite. It's not, just because you could see it on paper doesn't mean you could execute it in stone. That is about the only limitation that we have, and whatever other restrictions the cemetery might have.
Okay, all right.
You'll go into other firms, and there'll be rows and rows and rows of upright monuments, and someone might walk you through and say, which one would you like? Well, that's not how we approach things, right? Each life is individual. Each experience of that person is individual. And so what we try to do is we try to understand what those elements are or were, and which ones were more or less important to the surviving family. And we figure out a way to incorporate those into a memorial that's just for you. It's not one of the 20 or 30 that we have on the showroom floor, because we don't have 20 or 30 on the showroom floor. We've got 3 or 4, and most of them are small. They show color, they show some textures. They're just there as examples of some of the things that are possible, but they're really not designed to be taken out and engraved for you. Monica, you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, and I think, again, that's what separates us from a lot of other monument companies. You can see behind me, just this sample here, it's one solid piece of stone with all different textures. So a family may like that color, and then I can enhance it by changing finishes and textures and adding dimension and detail to the piece of stone to then enhance whatever the design or story they're trying to say for their family. So it's not a matter of, here I have a catalog, which one do you want? Here's Sears and Roebuck, let's buy a stone. We create every single one for every individual family. We don't duplicate our own work. So I've had families come in, I really like that monument. Well, that monument was the Smith monument. Let's make the Jones monument to be the Jones monument. We can take some concepts and ideas, but create something special and unique for your family, because every family is individual.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. It's a really great tribute to a family or to a loved one. What are some of your favorite monuments around that you like? Do you have any favorites?
There's, for me, the fact that we have been part of the history of Cleveland as it's grown up, we take special pride in that. So we could talk about some of the historical things that we've done, like the John D. Rockefeller obelisk at Lakeview Cemetery. 50,
you guys did that?
We did. 53 or 54 feet tall, the obelisk. That's the largest single piece of granite ever quarried in North America for monumental purposes. It came down from Barre, Vermont on 2 specially made flat cars with turntables to negotiate the turns. Every single railroad overpass from Vermont to Cleveland was inspected before it was shipped to make sure it could withstand the weight. And the most impressive thing or ironic thing about the whole thing is Rockefeller was quoted in the New York Times at the time saying he didn't want anything too flashy. Okay, so there's monuments like that. The Wade Chapel that we built at Lakeview Cemetery.
You guys built that too?
We did. That was donated to the cemetery by Jephthah Wade because at the time, winter burial was problematic. We didn't have backhoes and heavy equipment. They dug the graves by hand, and Northeast Ohio winter didn't permit that so much. So they needed a receiving space where they could keep the remains until the thaw, when they could be buried. I forget how many crypts are below the chapel, but that's one of the reasons why the chapel was built. The Brush Monument, that's our letterhead logo to Charles Brush, the inventor of the arc lamp, the namesake for Brush High School. I could go on and on with names like those, but there's newer ones like Alan Freed, who coined the phrase rock and roll. His monument is in the shape of a Wurlitzer jukebox. Monica designed that for the family. Michael Stanley, his memorial. I mean, I don't want to name drop, but I mean, the point is,
I love name drop.
There's so many different, each one has its specialness, whether it's a flat, like Monica said, whether it's a flat marker or something elaborate and ornate. There's something to be said for all of them. So Monica, what are some of yours?
Well, I will tell you that I absolutely fangirled because I got to do Jimmy Donovan's monument. And that was very near and dear to my heart. I'm a huge Browns fan, love Jimmy Donovan. And meeting his wife was such a joy for me. And I think what really moved her was when I explained to her, you know, how much Jimmy meant to all of us in Cleveland, certainly. But this monument was not for a Cleveland tribute. This monument was for her family, her husband, a father. It has nothing to do with the rest of us. It's about them. And at that point, I think she realized that in my heart, I wanted this to be a perfect tribute for their family. They have something new in the industry is QR codes. So we have a QR code on that monument for them to upload, you know, play calling and history and all of the philanthropy that Jimmy did throughout Cleveland, so that our monuments now are able to tell even more stories.
I just love that. You know, and I know I've taken up a lot of your time, and I'm really glad we touched on the history of your family. And I think I'm most impressive with the Wade Chapel. That's one of my favorite places with the Tiffany mosaics are just extraordinary. And it's another one of those gems in Cleveland that people, you know, pass by or don't realize, and it's just really special. So, and I want to thank both of you, Monica Johns, Michael Johns, sister and brother, monument experts, and with your company, the Johns-Carabelli companies, Semerano Monuments and Flowers, and thank you for your time. And I'll have information about how to reach you in our show notes, and it's at jcmemorials.com. But I'll have more information about your business and what you all do. And I just want to thank you for being so gracious with your time, and you have so much knowledge, and you gave me a deeper appreciation for the value of monuments and memorials. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Marie. Appreciate you having us.
Thank
All right.
you.
Bye.
Bye now.